So I'm going to be doing a reaction video to Stephen A. Smith um, of First Take from ESPN. He recently did a video. Um, the title of it is "Current State of Politics in America: My Thoughts on Democrats, Republicans, and Everyone in Between." Um, I guess I want to first off by saying that I also graduated from Winston-Salem State University, same alma mater as him. So definitely want to be respectful with anything I say or do. Um, but I've had opportunity to watch this video, um, and I would probably say there's probably 85% of what he says that I completely agree with as far as this video. And there's probably about a 15%, give or take, that I do disagree with. I have now gotten back to my roots. Um, I graduated Winston with my degree in social work. Um, because of a series of events, I've gotten back to my roots with, roughnecks, blue collar boys. I currently have a small handyman construction business. I also drive semis. Um, Most importantly, I still live in North Carolina. It's not the deep South, but we still consider ourselves the South. And so I definitely have more of a working class, blue collar, Southern perspective that kind of differentiates me from a lot of people who talk about politics or in the politics sphere. So, like I said, I've been able to watch this video. I definitely want to do a reaction. Um, agree where I agree, disagree where I disagree, provide a little bit more information um, that he may or may not have provided, or even just give more in depth reasons as to why I believe what I believe or disagree with what I disagree with. So, um, with that being said, let's just go ahead and start it off.
You know, as I sit here today, taping this particular segment about the world that we're living in, the political landscape that has unfolded before our very eyes over the last few weeks or so, specifically Donald Trump recapturing the presidency of the United States. There's a lot of people out there that are feeling very down and very sad and highly concerned about what the future holds. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not one of those people. Now, for the record, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him because I thought he was a divisive force. He was somebody that would create a bigger divide rather than galvanize folks and bring folks together. And I was incredibly worried leading up to the election that the race was going to be so tight that either he'd lose and claim he won, as he did in 2020, and create all kinds of chaos, or he'd win by a narrow margin, and we'd hear folks on the other side, meaning the left, lamenting how maybe it was rigged against them this time around, and all of this other nonsense that would serve to further divide this nation. That hasn't happened. Donald Trump won the presidency convincingly. He did it by capturing more of the black vote, more of the Hispanic vote, sweeping the swing states, winning the popular vote as well as the electoral college vote, and essentially doing so in such convincing fashion that it also left the Republicans holding the House and the Senate come next month in January. In some people's eyes, that's reasons for negativity. I look at it as an opportunity. An opportunity for the Democratic Party to get their stuff together, and an opportunity for Donald Trump and his administration to live up to promises made and to direct this country in a forward direction without looking back. Let me get to the Democrats first, and I'll get to the Republicans in a second, because I want everybody to know that I don't root against any president, and I'm not going to root against Donald Trump. I'm going to root for him to be successful, so long as that success benefits everyone, not just the constituency he may be inclined to cater to. But before I do that, allow me to get into the Democratic Party by simply asking a question. Are you ready to entertain why you lost? Are you ready to stop debating amongst yourselves back and forth? Did we go too far, whether or not we went far enough? Are you ready to concede that indeed you went too damn far with the identity politics, with woke culture, with cancel culture? Are you ready to concede that? Censorship and deplatforming folks, embracing far left unpopular policy positions. Are you ready to admit that all of that was wrong?
So I kind of disagree with what he was saying as far as policy, um, quote unquote far left policy. Um, if you're talking about where Kamala Harris is, kind of coming out saying, definitely there's people who are in prison that need to be able to have allow the government to pay for their gender reconstruction and all this other stuff. Yeah, I mean, most of us in the South, most of us, who are, independent, most of us, um, that grew up in the black church, and not even just the black church. Most of us who kind of grew up in the South, we're not really with that. Um, Not really with um, men transitioning into women, then playing in women's sports. Not really with um, drag queens reading to kids in school. Of course, not with the censorship, the especially when you're talking about what happened with the beer flu. Um, Definitely talking about being deplatformed. Um, Even when you kind of look at why Trump was originally kicked off of Twitter, um, what kind of transpired before, what happened after. But and when you're talking about a lot of these woke policies, but when you're sitting here talking about some of the economic things that the left did talk about, especially you look at somebody like Bernie Sanders, as far as economic policies, a lot of people actually agreed with that. You kind of come to the South. Um, there's a lot of younger blue collar guys, you know, that definitely want to make more money, that definitely want to close the border, that definitely believe in two-way, that definitely believe in, um, anything that's going to help people have affordability in housing, because definitely talking about infrastructure, um, definitely talking about uh, family tax credits and things like that. A lot of guys in the South agree with that. That's kind of what Bernie was talking about in 2016, but that didn't really necessarily happen with Joe Biden. Um, he didn't bring us more money into our pockets. I do have to give him kind of credit with some of the infrastructure bill that he passed, but even then, I don't think that it went far enough. As someone who literally travels America delivering loads, if you were really to see a lot of the bridges, the ports, the roads that are in, a lot of these rural areas inside of America, you would understand that they need more infrastructure. Um, when you look at the fact that a lot of these rural areas don't have cell phone reception, don't have high speed internet, don't have the same benefits as somebody like, for example, that lives in Charlotte. Of course, like I live I pretty much lived in Charlotte a, a large portion of my life, but then outside of Charlotte, it's before, the past 5, 10 years was a very rural area. And you're talking about a lot of country folks. And then the farther from Charlotte that you go, it's more rural. And Joe Biden didn't do anything to help those people. Um, Kamala Harris was not talking about doing anything to help those people. So when you're talking about when Stephen A. Smith is talking about these left policies, yeah, you're talking about the culture war policies. Um, most of the folks in the South are not with that. But when you're talking about helping the working class, helping lower middle America, um, yeah, we totally agree. So, but keep on with the video.
You would need to, because right now you look like a party that's lost. And I know there's a bunch of liberals out there that are raising holy hell, looking at somebody like me and others saying we don't know what the hell we're talking about. You know what we do know? You lost.
And to kind of piggyback off what he's talking about, when you're actually like looking at what the establishment left, what the progressive left are talking about right now, um, the big part of the establishment, when you're talking about the Bill Clintons, the Hillary Clintons, the the Obamas, of course, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, um, they have pretty much abandoned, given up on the working class. They pretty much didn't even get endorsed by unions this year. Um, you consider a lot of the working class as a basket of deplorables, i.e., what Hillary Clinton said. You just don't understand. As somebody that does have the privilege of having a college degree, I also understand that when you go to these institutions and you get around people who have doctorates, PhDs, um, a lot of them have a disdain for blue collar boys. You wouldn't have anything in the store if it wasn't for truckers. You wouldn't even be able to have the ability to have gas in your car. You wouldn't even be able to have the ability to wear the clothes that you wear, the car that you drive, the house that you live in, or even the apartment that you live in if it wasn't for truckers. Um, you wouldn't even be able to take a shit without plumbers. You wouldn't even be able to have the ability to wash and dry your clothes without plumbers. You wouldn't even be able to cut on your light switch without electrician or handyman. You wouldn't even be able to have a roof over your head if it wasn't for blue collar boys. And we do live in a society that has a complete disdain for people who empower and keep America rolling. Um, if you even think about it, what if there wasn't a cashier at Walmart at the gas station? What if there wasn't a nurse at the hospital? What if there wasn't, you know, a food a cook at a restaurant, or y- you would literally not be able to make it. But then we praise people who have the easy, who have it easy. You get on YouTube, make a video, maybe make a couple thousand, couple maybe a million or two. That's easy. We pay politicians, they make, roughly 200,000, especially when talking about congresspersons. A lot of them don't even do what they're supposed to. They argue, bicker back and forth, give you this theatrics, and then they have it easy. You know, yeah, I mean, I would actually say that, you know, people who are in the NBA, the NFL, of course they work hard, but it's not a necessity. If the NBA or the NFL wasn't here tomorrow, could America survive? And the reality is, we discredit, we look down upon people who keep America rolling. And it is disappointing. And then when you actually get around the intellectual community, people with PhDs and master's degrees, a lot of those jobs, not saying all, but I'd probably say nearly 50% could disappear tomorrow and America could still be rolling. And so, I think we have our priorities confused. And I think that's the problem with the Democratic Party. When you're talking about Harvard, Howard, um, you're talking about um, Sanford, Obama graduated from Columbia and Howard. Um, I mean, yes, you need a lawyer when you need a lawyer, but at the end of the day, if we didn't have a corrupt judicial system, if we didn't have corrupt laws, how much would we really need lawyers? It's not like a doctor. You get into you have an injury, you get into an accident. Yeah, you need somebody to operate on you. You need somebody to fix you up. You need somebody to give you that longevity of life. But I mean, a lawyer, we have people writing laws where you can't collect rainwater. But neither here nor there. I think that the real problem is the Democratic Party um, has a disdain, for the majority, has a disdain for the working class. And until they rectify that problem, they're going to continue to have problems. Barack Obama, outsourced jobs. Bill Clinton outsourced jobs. And so, until the Democratic Party gets to some kind of resemblance of FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, I think that they're going to continue to have problems, and that's going to continue to leave, you know, voters up for grabs, voters to be influenced by the Republican Party, by third parties, or just people are just not going to vote, as in a lot of people sat out this year. So.
Well, you know what we do know? You lost convincingly. You know what we do know? That you are now disempowered. You've been rendered practically impotent. So much so that in a time of progressiveness, where you got somebody like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, competing with Nancy Pelosi, the 84-year-old Nancy Pelosi, who recently had hip surgery. When competing against her, she still beat AOC.
So when you're talking about AOC, I have a lot of disagreements with Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. But just looking at it from a wider view, um, AOC came in Congress in 2018 and pissed off Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is one of the most disliked politicians in all of America. The only reason why Nancy Pelosi has the stature that she has is because of her ability to raise money from mega donors. Um, Also, when she was the Speaker of the House, she was able to get a large majority of the Democratic Congressional House in uniformity before she was able to present and pass a law. Meaning she would have the proper necessary votes before she introduced the law to have it passed. Nancy Pelosi is a terrible person. Um, she clearly does have a disdain for the average American. You can clearly see that when she's talking about her high level, expensive ice cream her 20-something thousand-dollar fridge and freezer for her ice cream. It's almost reminds you of the Marie Antoinette "let them have cake" scenario. Maybe we should learn something from the French Revolution about that. But AOC came in and pissed her off by protesting outside of her office. And if you've ever worked with women, which I used to, and if you've ever went to school with women, which I used to, and if you've ever dealt with women, then you would know that you could piss them off. And even though in that moment they are smiling in your face, the moment that they get a chance to stab you in the back, they will. Not all women, of course. I don't want the all police to come after me. Da 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 da. But AOC rubbed the wrong shoulders. And AOC, I don't think she would have necessarily had the votes. It was like 80 something to 130 something. I don't think she would have had the necessary votes to keep the power that she needed on the committee. But to act like Nancy Pelosi just didn't cheat her. And we're talking about 80-year-old people. She picked another guy who's 74 years old that has throat cancer, and versus somebody, you didn't even pick anybody in their, you know, 40s or 50s. You pick somebody 74 years old, and I'm sorry. Um, we really have to ask questions. Why do we have the silent generation and these boomers still running the country, hoarding all this power, hoarding all these positions when America is moving fast every day? We are developing new technologies. We are progressing um, in a lot faster as somebody who would have grown up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Um, Even as someone who was introduced to a cell phone in the eighth grade, we've literally went from an iPod to 4G, I mean, not 4G, but 4K cameras on cell phones. I remember uh, my teacher telling me, you have to learn addition, subtraction, multiplication, division by hand on paper because you're not going to always be able to walk around with a calculator. Surprise. So we have these elderly people who need to be moving on. And if you're 74 years old, 80 something years old, um, why haven't you retired? Why are you not traveling the world? Why are you not spending time with your grandkids? But yet, in the realm of Nancy Pelosi, you're supposed to be this great stock trader. Um, you're supposed to be better than Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. No, you're just corrupt. So I think Stephen has it wrong here. Yes, I have a lot of disagreements with AOC, but just to act like the power of Nancy Pelosi didn't directly fuck AOC. I mean, you know, to not mention that is kind of disingenuous.
Because somewhere along the way, somebody said, you know what? We don't need to move further left. We need to listen to the audience out there, the constituency out there that's saying center, be a centrist, or at least left of center, don't go to the fringes. If you're the Democratic Party, are you willing to accept that? Are you willing to accept that inflation happened on your watch?
And the reality is, you know, um, you know, Donald Trump printed approximately $8 trillion during COVID. A lot of that money, maybe not that much, but a lot of that money was needed. You close down the country, you don't allow people to go to work. you do need to allow people to be able to pay bills, pay rent, pay their credit cards, get food, get gas, make car payments. Um, People are unemployed, they need to have some kind of foundation, some kind of safety net until they're able to get back on their feet. I totally agree with that. Maybe some of those PPP loans was a little outlandish. We're giving American Airlines all this money. Please, please, please
on Trump's too to some degree, but certainly yours? Are you willing to accept that the crime in the streets was uncomfortable to see, that the homelessness in the streets was uncomfortable to witness? Are you willing to concede that you can't be all things for everybody? That in any society, particularly a capitalistic one, that everyone doesn't get to enjoy the same fruits of one's labor? Are you willing to concede that, Democratic Party? Especially if you're somebody like Gavin Newsom in California. Because when you look at the high taxes, the price of food and gas, the money that comes out of your paycheck, the open borders, the homelessness, the crime in the streets where people getting out the same day they got arrested. When you see all of that, do you understand now how uncomfortable that is? Do you realize that people want to be safe and they want to earn an honest living? If you're the left, do you understand that that's what people want to hear in the year 2025? They don't want to hear about an insurrection from 2021. They don't want to hear about election denials. They don't want to hear about that. That's not what they care about anymore. It's not that they don't believe it didn't exist or anything like that. It's that it's the past. It's over. Now you got to get with the program. And if you're Donald Trump and you're the Republican Party, do you now realize the lofty position that you're in? Let's understand, ladies and gentlemen, that at this particular moment in history, the Republicans have an opportunity to own the political landscape for years to come. J.D. Vance is young. He ain't 78 years old like Donald Trump, going on 79. Marco Rubio, your Secretary of State to be, he ain't old. Or if you're Donald Trump, do you understand what times you have before you? You understand it was a mistake to even come to Matt Gaetz to be the Attorney General, right? You understand that with Pete Hegseth for Fox News, I'm not getting into his personal affairs and what he made. may have been guilty of or what he proclaims to be innocent of. I'm getting into a dude hosting a show on Fox News for the weekends. And suddenly he's going to be in charge of 3 million people with the Department of Defense. I'm saying, hold on. This is an opportunity, Republicans. This is an opportunity, Donald Trump. You've never been in a position in my lifetime where you had so many different communities willing to embrace you and feel like you might embrace what their beliefs are, what they feel, what they think is in the best interest of this country. You might not want to talk about Project 2025. You might not want to be fixated on being a pro-lifer. It ain't necessary anymore. Yes, Roe v. Wade has been overturned. You got a 6-3 conservative majority in the courts, the Supreme Court. You got all of that going on. But I'm looking at some other things. I'm looking at a GOP, how it's become a big tent party, how it's picked up prospects that were Democrats, alienated Democrats, like Musk, like RFK Jr., like Tulsi Gabbard, like Joe Rogan. I'm thinking about your message. How the Republican Party wants less of your money. How they want to spend less on government. How they want to cut waste. Are you going to be consistent with that message, Donald Trump? Are you going to be consistent with that message, J.D. Vance? Are we going to focus on what actually won you this election? I'm thinking about a Trump administration right now that's fairly popular with both parties, according to recent polling showing how Americans are on board with a lot of, the stuff that he's doing in his transition prep. They're even on board with things like deportations. Now, they may not want mass deportations of just anybody, but do they want the criminals out of this country? Sure. Do they want the borders closed since over 12.5 million people were let into this country illegally? Sure they do. Are you going to be consistent with that, Donald Trump, or are you going to go overboard? I'm reading some notes here about the 119th Congress and how so much hinges on them. I'm thinking about the Trump and the GOP campaign message and how it was less about speaking directly to voter blocs and more about proposing common sense ideas that are good for all instead of just the people who vote for them. Do you recognize the moment that you have? If you're the Republicans, you have never been in a better position over the last 50 years. When I've given speeches and people would ask me about my vote, I would say I'm an independent, even though I mostly vote Democrat. But I would always say independent. Why? Because I want you to flatter me. Because I want you to know I'm open-minded to receive the flattering if you're willing to give it. I just never saw the Republican Party willing to give me that, like I saw this go round. But when Donald Trump comes along and he says, what do you have to lose? And it forces you to look at the Democratic Party, you got to pay attention. When he talks about less government spending, less waste, and keeping more of your money in your own pocket, and eradicating inflation, and making things affordable again, the price of food, the price of bread, the price of gas, etc. You got to pay attention to that. Instead of trying to guilt you into accepting anything that anybody throws along because they're touching your soul. These are the kind of things that hurt the party. Whether it's a Bernie Sanders, it's an Elizabeth Warren, it's an AOC or anybody else. Not to cast any aspersions on them because I'm sure they're good, God-fearing people that try to do the best and look out for the desolate and disenfranchised. But when you give everybody the impression that they're going to hell if they don't agree with you, that doesn't exactly help you compromise with the other side. And American people are tired of that. In the end, regardless of what we want to say about Donald Trump, here's what we have to look at. His reputation as a deal maker, bankruptcies notwithstanding, ultimately shows you that sitting across the table conducting business is something he's willing to do, which involves listening. And if he can get what he wants by giving you some of the things that you want, then everybody can end up walking away happy. I don't see this as a death knell for this nation. Am I concerned? Sure. Am I sure that Donald Trump will do what's right for everybody as opposed to just people who have fealty towards him? No, I don't. That's my number one worry with him. He's more interested in having loyalists than people who are ultimately competent enough and qualified for the jobs he'll put them in. Don't be dictatorial or authoritarian in that way. Have people who are committed to the cause, but people who are willing to get the job done in the best interest of the American people, as opposed to yourself. If Donald Trump, dare I say, shows selflessness instead of selfishness, now that he has secured the presidency for another 4 years, and this is his absolute last term that he can be president, and he's concerned about legacy in a fashion that will enable him to say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm doing right by everybody. And that's how he comes across. The Republican Party will be in a better place. Minority communities in this country will be better suited as well. Because what it will do is force more of us to look in the direction of the Republican Party, which means that the Democratic Party will no longer be able to take us for granted, which means both sides would have to appeal to us in an effort to gather our vote. And to me, that only makes things better, more interesting. In a capitalistic society especially, nothing makes the world go around like competition. And I love that. That's what we need. That is what I'm wishing for in 2025 when it comes to our political landscape. I hope y'all received that message in the spirit that I was trying to give it to you. Hold on to it. Hold it tight. Remember what I said, because you'll see me talking a lot more politics in 2025. I'm just getting started. And if you know anything about me, I come out swinging. Remember that. Peace and love, everybody. Make 2025 a good one.